Monitor. Sure, sure. We'll start off with roll call for the public hearing. Commissioner Tallman.
Connell.
Oops, sorry.
Present.
I hit the right button. Still. Hello. Hello. There we go.
There you go.
Connell.
Present.
Hepner.
Here.
Ingram.
Present.
Johnson.
Here.
Lammers.
Present.
Manus.
Here.
Med.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Reinhardt.
Present.
Tallman here and Schneider.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. First and only item for the public hearing is the case for REZ 19-02 is a request of Jennifer Smith, SJ 56 LLC Russell to rezone Lot 1 of Crow Valley Plaza, 12th edition, from CT Commercial Transitional District to C1 Neighborhood Commercial District. Property contains 9.5 acres MOL and is located at East 56th Street and Utica Ridge Road. Matt?
Thank you. Matt Flynn, Community Planning and Economic Development Department. As you know, since this is a public hearing, we'll just provide a real brief overview of the request and be available to answer any questions. So again, from the application, the real difference, one of the differences that is interested to the petitioner is the limit of 5,000 square feet in the CT Commercial Transition District. By rezoning the property to C1, that restriction would go away. So, and I'll let them respond to that more. This is an area that we've had a few zoning issues over the last few months, but as you probably recall, that the 56th Street, as far as the comprehensive plan goes, provides the distinction between area to the north designated as residential general, and then areas to the south regional commercial. The subject property, the Crow Creek condominiums to the north. This is the Blood Center, Crow Valley Country Club. So again, here's that future land use map. The delineation, you know, we have residential general and regional commercial. That's a pretty I'll say definitive change in land use character, and that rarely can happen just simply on the you know, on the edge of a dime or whatever you want to say. So we know that there's going to be a transition here, and I think that was the reasoning behind the former zoning, largely CO commercial office, and now the new designation CT or commercial transition. The zoning map, again, this is the new world. We're not talking about the old. So the brown multifamily, CT is the light purple. We have, remember, that commercial office park designation, which is really designed for commercial office parks. Go figure. We've got a little bit of R2 also up to the north. Here are those designations. We can go back to those if you'd like. I've also included the purpose statements from the zoning ordinance. Sorry about the screen there, but again, we can go back and compare those. Here's the C1, and again, I'll say the continuum of commercial zoning. C1 a little bit more intense than CT, allows more uses and doesn't have that 5,000 square foot restriction. So really, we try and identify what some of those issues are, and I think it's really a matter of land use compatibility. And so the next steps, April 2nd, we'll have our recommendation to you. You'll have your opportunity to make a recommendation. We'll forward that off to the City Council and the Committee of the Whole. Public hearing is on, most likely going to be on April 17th. With that, any questions?
Thank you, Matt. Barb, you've got your mic.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Reinhardt?
Thank you. I went ahead and went into the new zoning ordinance and looked up the definitions of CT and C1, and went down and took a look at all the other differences besides just the 5,000 square foot. And I'm just kind of concerned in the differences related to building height, 35 feet in CT, 45 feet in C1, lot sizes, maximum building height, front setbacks. The setbacks are considerably different. It's my understanding that based on Councilman Kluhl's Facebook page, the reason they want the change from to get rid of the 5,000 square foot is they want to have 20,000 square foot structures. And my concern is that if we change it to C1, the reality is that area could wind up with 45-foot structures, 2,000 square feet, that are the size of the call home or the bank down the street, or the size of some of the merchants on Elmore. And that, to me, doesn't seem to be a logical transition from established neighborhood into what is designed to be a low intensity, limited office space, which C2 is, into a low intensity mixed use. If you're going to be dealing with half-acre buildings that are 45 feet tall. That seems to be just a rather large leap. What are your thoughts?
This is a public hearing. We're taking input.
Okay. All right. That's all I have to say, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Hefner.
Matt, to the east, there are commercial buildings being constructed now.
Correct.
Can you pull that? And I think,
The lot here.
and then one down the
There's
street
a
also.
clinic. I believe that's the clinic under construction, and then this is the
I'm assuming,
Gulf
I'm-
Riverstone.
well, I'm assuming you've driven down that street and seen some of the commercial development that's going on. Okay. I believe we just approved something for Mr. Bush also, or for a development on Utica Ridge Road. Can you show us where that is, Matt? That's currently going?
Well, it's going to be located, it's a 1.5 acre lot that was rezoned late last year. If you recall, there was a request for C2 zoning there.
do.
Ultimately, the council approved as compromise as C1.
I am. I'm talking about the
He's
condo.
talking about the condo
I
count.
believe it's to the north, actually. And I believe that that's stipulated that that can be up to 45 feet in height also, based on that zoning change. And that's under construction at the time. Or it's not under
It's not
construction,
under
but it's
construction yet.
almost. But am I right? Is that can also be 45 foot in height?
I'd have to double check that for you.
I'm sure it can be. I remember
Okay.
that. So I guess that's.
I've been
just
out for a
wanted to-
little bit, and I'm trying to turn my brain back on. So
Okay.
Rather than say yes, I know that height was a concern. I just didn't
Yeah.
call offhand.
Well, I just wanted to kind of remind the commission of those projects anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hefner. Any additional questions of staff at this time? Seeing none, thank you, Matt. Would the petitioner like to step forward and discuss their project?
Good evening, Commission. I'm Jennifer Smith. I'm here representing Russell as the owner and applicant of the property. As Matt alluded to, really the whole reason we're here is because of that 5,000 square foot footprint maximum. When we came under contract from the Riverstone Group to buy the land, it was the zoning was split about down the middle, half CO, half C1. And then the new zoning ordinance came through, which limited it to the CT with that 5,000 square foot footprint. We don't really have any desire to do the C1 uses, the upgraded height setbacks. We're okay with everything in CT. We just have a little bit of issue with the 5,000 because it limits our development potential. Our office headquarters is just to the other side of 56th Street there. We're rebuilding a new one. Ground broke a couple months back on that. For an example, our new headquarters wouldn't be able to go there. One, because of the 5,000 square foot maximum unless we came through for a variance. But timing-wise is our biggest concern. As you know, it takes about 3 months to go through the process. And if we've got a lot of users that could come in with a tight time frame of a construction schedule, that their lease is expiring, they want to build a new headquarters, that type of a thing, sometimes that 3 months can kill a deal, which is what would have happened for our new headquarters. We have to be out by August of 2019. So that site ended up not being able to work for us for that. So we're trying to avoid that problem down the road. We don't have anyone in hand. We're not trying to, to slip anything through. Obviously, we have to come back through for site plan approvals and all of that as a user would come to the table. But right now, we're just trying to open ourselves back up to what we would have had the new zoning ordinance not come through with this new 5,000 square foot footprint. So that's kind of our goal. We know that we'd come back through, and if we had someone in mind, we could go through a variance instead of having the rezoning. But because of not having that in hand, this is really the best route that, after kind of exploring the options as to what to do, would be to rezone it. And we've had 2 neighborhood meetings with the neighbors to kind of have an open discussion prior to coming here to inform them why we're doing what we're doing. We're neighbors, we're invested in the area. We own all of the office park buildings to the other side from the Blood Center, not the Blood Center, but over. We're invested in the area. We want to be good neighbors. We want it to look aesthetically pleasing and flow with everything that's around there. We just don't want to limit ourselves in what we can do there. So that's why we're here.
Commissioners have any questions of the petitioner? Commissioner Lammers.
Can you tell me a little bit about the feedback from the neighborhood meetings?
Sure. Their biggest concern, height, obviously setbacks, those type of things. And it sounds like there's perhaps some water issues on the site that need to be dealt with regardless of whether it's a 2,000 square foot building or 20,000 square foot building. That's kind of what I gathered after the last meeting. I think we had a very good discussion. And it kind of ended up being derailed to just general water issues overall through the city, so we kind of got off topic. But that seemed to be the 2 major things, was the concern of height. I think with what's happened around there was some blowback, or perhaps they were kind of on their heels because of those things. And I understand, and we said we were willing to perhaps limit it to what the CT setbacks and height requirements are, just eliminate that 5,000 square foot footprint. We had no problem with that. We're okay with not being able to do a drive-through, which wouldn't be allowed in CT, but would be allowed in C1. We were very open to the different ideas. Our big issue is really just the size, and that was kind of the feedback, that they didn't necessarily have as much of an issue with that. It was more of the height, setback, water retention.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Staff, I'm not fluent with all of our new regulations and zoning areas yet. Do we have COP? Is that something, commercial office park, that could possibly fit this?
That's possible.
I don't know all the regulations, but I didn't know if that's something to consider.
It seemed like when we were going through the matrix, the CT C1 was the next, because there were some that would have, there was a special use permit allowed for C1 if it wasn't allowed in CT. So it seemed like that one matched up the closest. But we could go back and research the office park.
I just know there's a lot of concern with what you can do in C1 that
Right.
that might be an issue. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Right, yep, and like I said, we have no desire to do those things that are in C1 that aren't in CT anyway. That's not really what we see fitting best there either.
Right. All right. Any additional questions from commission? Seeing none, thank you. Would anybody in the audience like to step forward and speak in favor of the petition? Anybody else? Seeing none, would anybody like to speak in opposition? Please step forward and identify yourself.
Good evening. Connie Jones. I'm a resident of the villas at Crow Valley, and so we're obviously in the 6th Ward. I did attend...
Ma'am, could you maybe pull the microphone down to you a little bit?
That is a problem.
Thank you.
I did attend the last neighborhood meeting, and Mr. Ingham, you were there as well. So maybe just to kind of give it to you from my perspective, I think obviously we were concerned about the uses going from CT, and I did spend a lot of time down here last summer looking at the zoning proposal, and so was very happy and acceptable that that CT got maintained when the new zoning got inked by the city council here just a few weeks ago. So wasn't really looking forward to having to deal with the uses for C1, but Russell's been very agreeable to say they don't want any of those and just maintain CT. So that's maybe a good place to meet in the middle there. So the two things left in my mind are what Jennifer said was the building height. The current 5,000 square foot limitation under CT, when you think about it, essentially limits a builder to probably a one-story building. That for those of us who live along that southern perimeter, where it's going to be adjacent and essentially a stone's throw from my backyard, I hope you can appreciate I really don't want a multi-story building that close to my family room and my outside deck. The one that you referred to, Mr. Hepner, up there in the corner is sitting way up on the Utica Ridge. It's a good 50 feet away from the folks there along the other western edge of our property. So a considerable distance, and that is also going to be residential building versus this will be commercial that they're talking about. So we have that concern about the building height. I think if we could talk about a one-story building, perhaps, if we could get some agreement there, maybe we'd get myself and maybe some of my neighbors that have also objected to maybe agree. The other third point I want to talk about is the water runoff. And I don't know if you can see this, I don't have a pointer on me, but right about through the middle of the property, there's a huge natural swale running through there that kind of meanders almost all the way through there. And that does carry a good chunk of the water runoff from the area that affects the southern and eastern end of our property, which I happen to be one of those homeowners down there, as several others were at the neighborhood meeting voicing their opinion on this as well. And what we're concerned about with the larger square footprint that you would put on that land, getting even closer to us, does that start to affect that natural swale and start to drive more water back up into our property? We see quite a bit of it happening already, and we're trying to make sure that it doesn't get exacerbated, especially down along that south and east end, because the way that land slopes, if you're not familiar with that, from the Utica Ridge coming down 56th Street there all the way over to 18th Street in Bettendorf, there's as you head east, there's a natural slope down, and so the water does naturally run that way. So we're concerned about that. Also, I'm the treasurer for our homeowners association, and we've had to have our French drain that drains out through there put in and jetted out just this last year, because we are seeing more silting and more backing up of water just naturally, and that's all farmland right now. So the bigger the footprint, the more concern that we have. So for those reasons, our alderman has committed back to some of us that he has asked the city engineer for a water analysis plan of that swale and how that naturally drains to get a better idea of how it's supposed to be working and is it working correctly. And I know he's also asked the developer for a site plan, because short of having a picture of how big of a building would you try to put in there and where would you put it and locate it on either side of that swale, I can't make an informed decision. So without that data, until we have that data, it's prudent for me to continue to object to the proposal they have. But I've told Jennifer that, you give us that data. I'm a reasonable person. I can change my mind, but until I have that data, I have to object. So I want to thank you for your time and consideration of that input.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak in opposition? Seeing none. Commissioners, any final questions of the petitioner or staff? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing for case number REZ 19-02, and it will come back to us hopefully in 2 weeks. Appreciate your input. We will now close the public hearing and move on to our regular meeting agenda. Roll call, please.
Connell.
Present.
Hepner.
Here.
Ingram.
Present.
Johnson.
Here.
Lammers.
Present.
Manus.
Here.
Med.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Reinhart's.
Here.
Tallman here and Schneider.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. First item, report of city council activity.
Yeah, we've kind of used this time to talk about the new zoning ordinance. Let's just call it the zoning ordinance at this point. But we have committed to the administration that we would do a 3-month, a 6-month, and 12-month, I'll say, cleanup of things that we have uncovered in terms of that being potential issues and possible impediments to development. And you know, it was a very cold winter, but it's warming up now. We're seeing a lot of activity, and we've had a few things that are really time sensitive. So I believe at our last meeting we did talk about having a public hearing for a number of text amendments. Do you have a rough figure on
It's about 7 of them.
about 7 text amendments, and then 1 rezoning. That would be the now Marine Credit Union on East 46th Street. We, by a mistake, zoned that multifamily. They'd like that addressed sooner rather than later. But in order to have, so one suggestion in order to expedite, these are all cleanup items, I would say, would be to, if you were ready to do so, actually conduct your public hearing and vote on this matter at your next meeting, April 2nd. What we would do also, you probably note there's no preview provided, but we would provide you information on what we're suggesting, hopefully by the end of the week. So again, your choice. You don't need to decide now, but we would not object if you chose to vote on April 2nd as well.
For the commissioners, I can honestly say Matt and I have discussed these 7 items. I don't think there's any reason why we wouldn't be able to do that in one night. But we'll take a look at it, but I saw no issue.
Do they just come to us then packages?
Yeah, yeah. Any questions? Commissioner Med.
Thank you. Matt, I was gone when they published this plan in the Times, I think, and I don't get the Times anymore anyway, but are we going to get a publication or a copy of this new piece of legislation, or what? How do we, I know it's online, and I know when I have a hard time
Well,
looking at it with my cell
We
phone.
by design did not print what I would call easily readable copies, but if we have a stack of what actually was published in the newspaper, which is seriously about 4 or 5 point type, 210 pages consolidated down to 16, and we'd love to send you all off with a copy.
What's the insurance policy for this?
I don't know. I can't help you there.
Realistically, we could send out a PDF, a lower resolution PDF that's emailable of the entire zoning ordinance. We'd be happy to do that tomorrow.
I think that would help if you could do that. Thanks.
But we've got plenty of copies. Do you?
You talked me out of it.
Well, I think Commissioner Reinhardt is also looking for a copy, so you can have that 4-point copy if you like.
Well, actually, I was on the advisory committee from when they were redoing it, so I have a draft copy that I've made adjustments to. So,
Okay, there you go.
but I would certainly like to get an official final
Yeah.
draft. Would be really nice.
And I hope this doesn't sound like I'm scolding you, but if it's a draft copy, throw it away because it's not accurate.
Right. Thank you, Matt. Moving on to Secretary's report.
Move report.
Second.
All those in favor of the Secretary's report signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it will stay as written. Moving on to comp plan. I assume, Matt, you've pretty much covered it.
Yeah, I guess I jumped the gun with I've given the report under city council
Okay,
activity.
we're not going to scold you. We'll move on. Zoning activity, we have none. Subdivision activity, we have several cases. Commissioner Johnson, could you dive into that?
Yes, sir. First, I will forward case F19-01, request of Ronald Dirksen for a final plat of Abby's Estate on 0.36 acres located at 2305 West 67th Street, containing one lot in Ward 8. The staff recommends the City Plan and Zoning Commission accept the listed findings and forward case number F19-01 to the City Council with a recommendation for approval, and I so move.
Second.
Case number F19-01 has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions of commissioners? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Connell.
Yes.
Hepner.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Lammers.
Yes.
Manus.
Yes.
Med.
Yes.
Quinn.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Without an updated zoning, still yes.
Tallman, yes. Schneider.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next.
All right, next is case F19-03, request of HOA Development LLC for a final plat for a two-lot subdivision located east of Elmore Avenue and southeast of the terminus of East 46th Street in Ward 6. Staff recommends the Plan and Zoning Commission accept the listed findings and forward case F19-03 to the City Council with a recommendation for approval subject to the 10 listed conditions. And I so move.
Case number F19-03 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Commissioners, any questions? I guess I accidentally omitted asking if there was anybody in the audience that wanted to speak on the last item. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, commissioners, any questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Hepner.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Lammers.
Yes.
Manus.
Yes.
Med.
Yes.
Quinn.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Tallman, yes. Schneider.
Yes.
And Connell.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next.
Next is case F19-04, request of Jared Mahaffey of CESO Incorporated for a final plat of a replat of Lot 33 of Spring Village Edition, a single lot subdivision located northwest of the intersection of Kimberly Road and Bell Avenue in Ward 6. Staff recommends the City Planning and Zoning Commission accept the listed findings and forward case F19-04 to the City Council with a recommendation for approval subject to the listed conditions. And I so move.
Case number F19-04 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Commissioners, any questions? Would anybody in the audience like to speak? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Johnson.
Yes.
Lammers.
Yes.
Manus.
Yes.
Med.
Yes.
Quinn? Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Tallman, yes. Schneider.
Yes.
Connell.
Yes.
And Hepner.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next.
And finally, case P19-01, request of Grunwald Land Development for a preliminary plat of Westlake Settlement on 79 acres located in unincorporated Scott County, southwest of the Locust Street Interstate 280 interchange, containing 47 lots. It's adjacent to Ward 1. Staff recommends that the City Planning and Zoning Commission forward case number F19-01 to the City Council with a recommendation for denial as the plat does not achieve consistency with subdivision requirements, nor is the location of the development within the urban service area. And I so move.
Case number P19-01 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Matt?
Mr. Chairman, I will be abstaining from this case.
Thank you, Mr. Tallman. Matt?
Thank you. Again, Matt Flynn. I wanted to maybe spend a little bit of time talking about this case. It's not necessarily unusual, but it's unusual for Davenport. I'll just say anecdotally throughout my career, issues based on the urban fringe or development occurring immediately outside municipalities with or without the structure of intergovernmental agreements can always be challenging. We just really haven't had that situation come up very much in Davenport. You know, Davenport is blessed or cursed. I think it's a good thing that we have a lot of undeveloped area within the city limits, and pressure to expand outward is really pretty low. We had a number of annexations, Sterilite, Kraft, some Kepi property north of I-80, but as far as expansion, particularly to the west, that really hasn't been an issue. So situation that we had here, this is a subdivision, again, proposed outside the city, but within the 2-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction area, meaning that the city has the ability to review and recommend approval of subdivisions, and don't quote me, but Brian, but I think in areas where there is not county zoning, I believe the city then would have full authority to approve subdivisions. But here in Scott County, we have, you know, I'll say a pretty refined planning and zoning department and function with both county zoning and a county subdivision ordinance. So basically, we have the ability to review plats, but ultimately it does come down to Scott County on whether or not they're going to approve or deny a subdivision. One of the things also that should be noted is, I lost my train of thought. Oh, the county board will, just out of practice, not take action until the city completes its process. You know, we have a good working relationship with Tim Huey and his staff and the county. So when Mr. Grunwald began to contemplate this development, first thing that the county did was to have directed them to have a discussion with the city regarding annexation. And we did that. The main issue that kind of bore itself is that we have the Blackhawk Creek Interceptor Sewer still a pretty good distance away on the other side of the interstate. Ballpark figures came in at about $4.5 million to extend that sewer at this time. So obviously that's problematic in terms of just simply providing sewer. That being said, that's not the only issue with annexation. The city's ability to provide services, the further you go out, you think about routine police patrols, garbage and snow plowing, public services, emergency services, gets you know, increasingly more cost inefficient to continue to move out. And that's really the basis for the city's urban service boundary, which is in the comprehensive plan. So this property is outside the urban service boundary, and the sewer is an issue. And as this development came forward, there were a couple things involved. First of all, the property was proposed at the county level to be rezoned from a C2, which I believe is a general commercial designation, to residential. Now, again, here in Iowa, the city does not actually have the authority to review, comment, protest rezonings. That's different from a lot of other states I've worked in, particularly Illinois. The municipalities have a pretty good hammer when it comes to controlling rezoning activity immediately outside the city. But that's not the case here. We didn't really focus a lot on that request because it was in essence a downzoning. We don't really have any authority, so we told the county that, you know, we really don't have an issue with this rezoning, but if development is going to occur, we think it should be, property should be annexed, even though we were not in a position to do that, and it should meet municipal services. Again, just real quickly, here I know you have the plat in your packet. Plat's oriented east-west versus north-south, but this is the property we're talking about. Honda there, Locust 280, Westlake Park down in this area. Here's the plat. Couple points of access. This actually doesn't have I apologize, I don't know the name of the north-south. Is that Y
Y48.
48? And then the point of access to Locust Street. Number of cul-de-sacs, some open space, detention provided along the southern perimeter. So like I said, it's pretty rare that we've had cases like this. We've had smaller subdivisions come, county subdivisions come along, but it's been several years and they have tended to be a little bit smaller. And I don't think this is in, our position of recommending denial. I don't think is, doesn't indicate an issue with Mr. Grunwald, who's done development in the city, or with the county. I think this is a case where we really need to keep kind of our super long range perspective in place and think even beyond the 20-year planning horizon. And I think it's just for a subdivision that's proposed with, as I understand from Natural Resources, inadequate detention, open ditches, no sidewalks, this could be problematic in the long term. And we don't have to think too far back in terms of where we've had issues with, I'll say, a rurally developed subdivision in the area south and downstream from Portillo's, the Lorton and Fairhaven area, built at a much lower standard. We want to try and avoid that. So while our position, we recognize that the county ultimately has a decision. I think from the city's perspective, this would be a subdivision to recommend denial.
Thank you,
So
Matt.
with that, happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions? Seeing none at this time. Thank you, Matt. Would the petitioner like to step forward and speak?
I'll start. Kevin Engelbrecht, KDC Properties. Actually, we're one of the owners, a couple other partners on the property, and we're working with Dale Grunwald to develop it. So I've got several different directions to go. Several to address your concerns in the letter that you sent. Appreciate you bringing up some of these things so we can clarify. If I could maybe start with a couple of those points. I think in the letter you mentioned septics at the, no, I'm brain farting, the old trailer park.
Lake Kenyatta.
Lake Kenyatta, yep. So if I recall in the letter you were saying that they were shut down because the septics failed. Is
Well, I
that
understand that I was incorrect, that it was not a septic system, but
right?
I also understood that they didn't want septic as a solution to the problem. They were looking for either a tie-in to the county system or their own treatment facility, to speak, but not septic.
Right.
So,
And that's probably because of the limit of size. You got to have an 3,300 square feet if it's 30 or less, or an acre lot. So the trailer park wasn't able to accommodate that, so that's why they couldn't go septic.
correct.
If
I would agree with that.
So there's that. One of the other points in the letter was runoff from the subdivision. Would it be possible to put that plat back up?
I will acknowledge that I've walked the site since then and see that the runoff primarily would go the opposite direction. So
Okay.
I do acknowledge that. Initially, from conversations I had and some topographical just pictures,
Right.
it appeared as though there was substantial runoff to the south. And
Right.
with the county investing about $4 million in the rehab of West Lake and its structures there, there are 9 lakes, I was concerned.
Absolutely, and that's how we started the whole process with conversations with the park, just to make sure that we weren't going backwards on any of what their purposes were and where they wanted things to end up, and actually conversations with Roger Keene and Mark Miller. They would actually prefer it to be residential rather than commercial. So that's how can we work together and the whole process all the way through. So, yeah, as you can see, most of the drainage goes, well, east is towards the top. There will be some detention to the south that will catch from that south road falling south. Everything else from that south road will drain to the east. So it'll actually lessen the amount of impact on the lakes and stuff. And one of the points that we're asking, well, what do we need for water detention? And the design that they have for the ponds, there's actually two big not ponds, but detention structures going in the park ground, part of the lake restoration project that they're doing to accommodate all the field runoff coming from this field. So it will actually help with their cause. So a couple other points. If Matt was talking about having to have sidewalks, and we can put in there that if it is annexed by the city, that they would have to put sidewalks in at that point. We can accommodate that. A couple other things with water detention and soaking in. One benefit to having the open ditches, in addition to the country feel, is you get more infiltration all the way along there, rather than channeling it all into one pipe and dumping it out at the end. So it's actually helping to spread out the water that will be rather than filling the lake all on at once.
So speaking of water runoff, what are you doing in regard to the streets? Where does all that water go? I assume you're not putting in underground runoff and funneling that somewhere.
Well, all the drainage, like I said, from the South Street will all be drained by open ditch, over to the detention pond.
But you got cul-de-sacs quite a ways away from any ditch. How does all that water find a ditch? I mean, I assume you're going to have curbs.
No curbs.
Oh, you're going to have no curbs.
Right.
So then the water just runs off into the yards.
Into the ditch right off the street, yes.
Well, you're not going to have ditches inside the development, are you?
Well, sure.
Really? Okay.
A country feel just like the surrounding neighborhoods.
Okay.
It's the same type of thing. So we're just following what's done in the other neighborhoods. So with a 6-foot shoulder outside of the edge of the street. So I think that's all. Take some questions if anybody.
Well, I guess my biggest concern is if you were to look up the definition of urban sprawl, this is it. This is going immediately outside of the city boundary and putting in I consider a pretty major subdivision, 70 acres large. And I just struggle with the whole urban sprawl issue creeping out into the country. I realize you're going from a C2 to a residential, and I understand that Westlake is all happy with that, but it just I struggle with the whole urban sprawl thing.
So if I can ask, when the other subdivisions went in west of Y48,
you couldn't see Davenport from there. I just didn't think that was quite the same. I just a personal opinion. I'm not representing the commission. I was not representing the commission in the letter you're referencing, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that. That was me as a citizen, not as a member of this commission.
Okay. Yeah, so it's we're just following the same plan as all the other neighborhoods around there, and trying to do it better, trying to accommodate all the regulations and stuff. So,
Okay.
all right, thank you.
Commissioner Reinhardt, hold on. Commissioner Reinhardt.
This is directed more to Matt than it is to you. How close is the nearest fire station? And
I mapped that, Matt. It's 8 miles from Bluegrass is the first responding fire community, which is a volunteer fire department. If I remember correctly, Buffalo was their backup, and then it goes to Walcott. So it's a bit of a drive, and they're all 3 volunteer facilities.
all right, thank you.
And
Police is provided by Sheriff's Department.
I appreciate the chair chiming in because I was going to respond. Well, it's either the one on Telegraph or at Northwest or at 5 Points, and those are city facilities, and that's another kind of underlying issue with development on the fringe is that people don't know where their services are coming from, and quite often people in a rural non-municipal development are shocked to find that it is not the closest people coming to respond to their emergencies.
Thank you, Matt. Commissioner Manus.
I just wanted to echo some of the thoughts that the chairman made and Mr. Reinhardt's. This is really the classic reason that we have an urban service area and established urban service standards so that growth can be logical and all the services necessary can be provided. So I do agree with the staff recommendation. I think for the most part, Scott County and the city have worked together really well, and I hope that is going to continue. I know that they are sharing with Davenport their comprehensive plan, and Scott has participated and reviewed this plan as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Manus. Anybody else like to speak at this time? Seeing none. Any additional comments?
Well, just you know, the biggest hang up is not having the sewer, I imagine, because to not be annexed. Is that fairly accurate?
Correct.
So if there's sewer, it wouldn't be considered urban sprawl, is that?
Well, I'm not saying that delineates it from being urban sprawl. I still say it's urban sprawl because it's outside of the city, but yet the people living there can see the city and think that that's where they're at. I mean, you're taking a big leap out of our service area.
Even though it's city property right across Locust? It's outside the city, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, and then we also have a subdivision going on West Locust, Southwest Locust, and you know, we're trying to get that going, and the city's having trouble getting sewer to that as well. So we're trying to find a spot that works, and it's just a little frustrating that I mean, even though that we're in city, we're having trouble getting sewer there. So it's kind of a
I can't speak to that because I
sword.
don't know the
So-
property. I don't know of the issues you're speaking of,
Right.
so that's not germane to this.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any additional thoughts, comments?
I just wanted to clarify, so the motion was to deny, so a yes vote means
Yes,
you're
I'm-
voting to deny.
Thank you. As Ryan just stated, this is a motion for denial, so a yes vote is for denial per staff's recommendation. Roll call, please.
Lammers,
Yes.
Manus,
Yes.
Med,
Yes.
Quinn,
Yes.
Reinertz,
Yes.
Tallman, oh, he abstained. Schneider,
Yes.
Connell, yes. Hepner,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes.
Vote is 9-0 to deny.
Thank you, Commissioner Connell. That would conclude the zoning activity. Move on to future business. Matt, is there anything we need to discuss?
I don't think so.
Communications, anything in general? Anybody in the audience like to speak? Any additional business? Seeing none?
Move to adjourn?
All those in favor of adjournment signify by aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you for your attendance. Please drive home safe.